Keisha, I'm Roxanne.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing? It's nice to meet you.
Well, I'm doing okay.
Okay, did you have trouble getting here? I know the traffic was pretty bad.
No, I just work across the street in the coffee shop.
Oh, okay. I haven't been there because I don't drink coffee, but I've heard some really good things about that coffee shop.
Well, it's a nice place to work. I like all of my employees, my fellow employees, and I like the customers as well. But the only thing is, I don't really like coffee. I prefer tea.
Oh, what kind of tea do you like?
I like all kinds, but my favorite is Earl Grey.
Yeah, I love Earl Grey too. And I just wanted to check, so I'm sure you saw this on your intake form, but this session is being recorded so that you can listen back to the session for homework. Is it still okay with you to be recorded?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, good. And you probably saw this on your intake form too, but the type of therapy that I do is called prolonged exposure therapy. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah. So basically, prolonged exposure therapy is considered to be the gold standard treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as we called it. And I know that our intake clinician, Sherry, diagnosed you with PTSD. So did she have time to explain to you what that means? And do you feel like PTSD is an accurate diagnosis for you?
Yeah, I think her explanation was pretty thorough, and I really think that PTSD is what I'm experiencing.
Okay. I'm glad that feels accurate for you. I'm glad we got the right diagnosis. So yeah, with prolonged exposure therapy, basically it's based on a theory called emotional processing theory, which believes that our thinking and our behavior can change as a result of trauma. So for example, people's beliefs towards themselves can change. They can start to have negative beliefs about themselves, and they can also start to avoid situations that remind them of the trauma. So for example, if a man is mugged on the street, he might avoid that street, or he might start to believe that he's weak because he was mugged. Have you ever experienced any thoughts like that?
I have. I do. I'm afraid of situations and people that somehow remind me of what happened to me.
Okay, yeah. And in prolonged exposure, we call that kind of thinking pathological structures. And in prolonged exposure, we actually believe that avoiding situations and places and memories that remind us of the trauma can actually reinforce those pathological structures and make PTSD worse over time. So what we do in prolonged exposure therapy is we do imaginal exposure and in vivo exposure. So with imaginal exposure, what we do is that happens in the office, and you recount the traumatic event out loud. And as you're recounting that traumatic memory, you use present tense as if the event is happening right now. And after you recount the event, we're going to process your feelings, and you're going to actually kind of reframe some of your thoughts and beliefs surrounding the traumatic memory. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And with in vivo exposure, what we do is you actually go out to places and situations that remind you of the trauma. What do you think about that?
Well, it makes sense. Is this something that we're going to start this week?
Well, let me explain a little bit more, okay?
All right.
So with the imaginal exposure, how it can help you is if you do that kind of exposure repeatedly, it can train your brain to recognize that the memories about your trauma are not actually dangerous. And with the in vivo exposure, that can train your brain to recognize that the places and situations that remind you of the trauma are not actually dangerous. And we're not going to start the exposure right away. So what's going to happen is next week I'm going to teach you a little bit more about how trauma may be affecting your actions and your behaviors. And we're also going to make a list of places and situations that you avoid because of the trauma. Does that seem like something you'd be ready to do?
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the third week, we're going to start the actual exposure.
Oh, I
So
see.
yeah, we'll start the imaginal and the in vivo exposure. How do you feel about doing that on the third week?
I guess I'll be ready.
Yeah, I think that you can
Yeah,
do it,
sure.
definitely. It seems like you are ready. And can you tell me in your own words why you're here today?
Well, I was raped. I was in my house, and my apartment, and I had the music on pretty loud. And there was a knocking at the door, and it was a loud knocking, and I thought it was somebody, a neighbor, complaining about the music being loud. So I opened the door, and I was assaulted and raped. Since that time, it's been difficult for me. I haven't wanted to have sex with my husband. I haven't wanted to look in the mirror. I haven't even wanted to be around people.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that you experienced that, and I'm glad that you're here talking about everything. How does it feel to remember the traumatic event right now, to remember the rape? How are you feeling?
Well, when I think about it, it feels bad. It's like it had just happened or something. It's like it's not over in a way.
Do you feel anxious?
I certainly think anxious would be, yeah, I feel anxious. Is that the same thing as worry?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to do a breathing activity to help you feel more calm?
Well, I could try it, yes.
Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to put your hand on your stomach like this. And I want you to breathe into your stomach like it's a balloon, like I'm doing. And I want you to do that slowly. And I'll have you do that for about 30 seconds. You can stop if you feel ready to stop. How are you feeling now?
I feel calmer.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that breathing exercise is called diaphragmatic breathing. And what I want you to do as homework is to try doing that exercise at home every day. And as you're doing it, just notice if it helps you feel calmer. And I do want to tell you now that we're not going to do that breathing exercise when we actually do the exposure activities, but you can practice the exercise at home every day. Yeah. Does that seem like an exercise you can do at home?
Seems easy to me. Yeah,
Good.
I can do it.
Yeah. Shall we take a little break?
Yeah, it's okay. I'd like to use the bathroom.
Okay. Let's be back in 5 minutes.
All right. That noise from that machine.